So the Holy Spirit had grown in John more than he had grown in the first three. Therefore, since John had more time to grow as a Christian, therefore he writes more acutely about who Jesus is. Is that right? It could be the case. I mean, I think that Jesus could be presented in John because John had more time to grow. And I think in some sense that is true. We got to think of it this way. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, dying in the 60s, all had only a certain amount of time to get their gospels down and really reflect on things. And that's why this one group, the more inductive group, says they just didn't die with a perfect theology. That doesn't make them not Christian and not Christ followers. It just means that they hadn't got it all figured out yet. John later on gets the closest to having it all figured out. And so whenever John writes on the island of Patmos or from Ephesus, whenever he pens his gospel, he has had a lot longer to reflect upon theology and put things together and really draw conclusions about what Jesus did and what he said and put together a very deductive Jesus. This is God from very beginning to end. I mean, that's what it is, and that's from John's approach, what he's doing and he's contributing. I got to write something different than these guys wrote. He's not going against them. He's just didn't tell us why he was writing it differently than them. But at the same time, that could be the case. That would be the very inductive approach, that he had a much better theology and understanding of Jesus. And to back that up, there is this understanding that within the Bible itself, there is development of thought. I mean, you've got to understand, whenever you read the Bible, whenever you read the Old Testament, you read, say, Genesis 3:15, the first gospel, sometimes called the proto-evangelion, the first gospel, where God comes to Eve and the serpent, and he gives the serpent a curse, and he gives Eve a curse, and he talks to the serpent, and he says, I'm going to put an enmity between your seed and her seed. Her seed is going to produce to where someone will come who will crush your head. You will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head. Now, that's not much of a gospel. That's not, whenever I'm presenting the gospel and I have a gospel track out, I have a picture of a snake and somebody crushing his head and somebody's heel being bruised, and we don't know who it is. And look, you need to trust in this. I mean, I don't know what it means, but it just means God's going to fix things. And that's really all they had in the garden, was that, don't know what that means. When they came out of the garden, they were scratching their heads saying, did you know what that means, Eve? No, I ain't got a clue. Did you know what it means? Well, I just think it means God's going to fix things. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, let's trust in him for that. And so they trusted in him based upon the gospel that was given at the time. God was going to fix things. And this was all throughout the Old Testament. It developed more and more and more to where Abraham had more of an understanding, and David had more of an understanding, and Isaiah had more of an understanding, to where you get to the New Testament. And the New Testament presents Christ and the gospel, the finality of the revelation of the gospel. And this is the greatest understanding we've had. Yet at the same time, do all the writers of the New Testament have the same understanding, or is there still development of thought going on? And some people would say that even in Paul, this is what Daniel Wallace would argue, that even in Paul himself, you look at earlier Paul writings compared to later Paul writings, and you see a development of thought, a more secure theology, especially with regard to substitutionary atonement. So again, the inductive approach has its merits and has been held by many scholars, evangelical scholars included, but it seems to be most evangelicals are going more with they already knew, they just kept it kind of this messianic secret.